All right, hello, everyone. This is the Pro Wrestling Program. My name is Kyle, and we are reviewing Raw from November 27th, 2023, the return of Randy Orton and the return of CM Punk, which has blown up an insane amount on social media. Everybody's talking about it. There are so many people saying that they would be tuning into Raw for the first time in years to watch it live. It was intoxicating. It was contagious. I felt it. I don't think I've been this excited for the opening of Raw in almost a decade. Like, that's how big this Raw felt. Two returning stars, not just CM Punk. CM Punk is by far the biggest part of this show and what everybody was going to be tuning in for, but Randy Orton is still there, and that's a big return. And I will say that after this, Orton had a better return on Raw here. For what we were advertised, Punk ending the show in the main event slot with a 5-minute promo that was just kind of I'm still very much looking forward to what's going to be happening next, and we'll kind of get into that when we get to Punk's portion. The overall show of Raw was okay. It wasn't great. I kind of really expected them to bring their A game, that I felt that this would kind of feel like a WrestleMania Raw, like the post Raw after WrestleMania, not in the previous few years, but before, like what it used to be, where it would just be like this crazy big show. They even opened up the show with Wade Barrett saying, "This feels like a premium live event." And I was like, yes, this is great. I feel it. And it didn't really deliver. There are certain parts that were still good, but this could have been so much better. So let's dive into this. We opened up the show with a bit of the Survivor Series fallout, and what I think they should have done is, instead of having the replays and a new Raw intro and all that kind of stuff, just have the fireworks or something, start Raw within the first 20 seconds, Orton's music should have hit, and have him come out right away instead of showing the replay. You have Orton talk, then you show the replays of everything that happened down at Survivor Series. That, I think, would have just created a more special tone for this Raw, and I feel like they missed their chance by having the Survivor Series stuff. Even though there's some crazy stuff that happened at Survivor Series, you could have that afterwards, because everybody that was tuning in knows exactly what happened at Survivor Series. There's no way that they didn't. So anyway, after the replay of Survivor Series showing that Punk is back, the War Games, Orton's back, all that kind of stuff, we did get Randy Orton come out, and he cut a good promo here. What I liked about this too is that throughout the show, Cody was really brought up by a lot of people. Orton mentioned him in his promo, thanking him, talking about the War Games match, which Orton was the only thing Orton had not done, and that is what was created by the late, great Dusty Rhodes, Cody's father. A lot of nice stuff. I like that they're really treating Cody Rhodes as a big star, because he is. He is arguably, I mean, he's in the top 4 babyfaces right now in WWE. Orton and Punk kind of shifted things a little bit, so I don't really know who's number one, but it's either those two, Cody Rhodes or LA Knight. Those are your top 4 guys of the WWE at the moment. So very happy to see that. Eventually, Rhea Ripley comes out, and I was like, oh, the Judgment Day. So you go from this major hype of Randy Orton coming back, and then you bring it down. But it was only Ripley, which did help a lot. If it would have been Priest or Finn Balor or Dom might have worked, as odd as that sounds, or J.D. McDonough, any of those guys to come out with Ripley, I think would have just been, oh God, I could not have suffered through a Priest promo. Oh, he's lost so much steam. And I never really thought that Priest was this big guy anyway, but I'm so tired of everything that they've done with Priest. So anyway, Ripley comes out, and she had a nice back and forth promo with Randy. And Randy, I'm so tired of the Judgment Day because they're just boring to me now. I don't know. The booking of them probably is a major part of it, but they're not necessarily the biggest stars. And I mean, they're heels, so they should be acting like they are anyway, but it doesn't really work as well. I feel like Dom can totally do that. Like, Dom and Ripley, without the others, could work. I just don't care about the others enough. So anyway, they had a nice little promo back and forth, and Dom says the Judgment Day are the ones that hold all the gold here, and Randy says, you know, I keep hearing about all this mommy talk, but then you were running things, and that makes sense because Daddy wasn't home. Really well done. Ripley is totally going to get an RKO at some point in time, and I'm all here for it. That is going to be excellent. Eventually, the Judgment Day comes out and attack him, and he kind of pushes. I think it was only JD and Dom but he pushes Dom out of the ring and hits JD McDonough. So then Randy Orton says that he's going to talk to Pierce and he's going to get a match with Dom later tonight. Well done. And I think that this was a good way to reintroduce Randy Orton to a degree going up against Dom. I don't want him to necessarily feud with the Judgment Day. Other than maybe Dom, I'm okay with that happening. Granted, their match already happened, but we're going to see where things go as things progress. I will say, though, even with Ripley talking to Orton, it felt fresh having Orton have rebuttals to her because Orton is great on the mic. We haven't seen him for a really long time, so I feel like I'm able to enjoy him a lot more. One of the things that Jim Cornette says quite often is that if you don't go away, I can't miss you. And it's true. With Orton back now, it feels fresh. It feels new. I feel excited to be watching Raw again because it's going to be different. It really switched things up. And we're going to talk about a few things here that really made the show feel exciting again. And it had to do with an influx of people that were returning, that were changing things up. So it's not going to be the norm. I almost feel like you might have to do maybe a mini draft every 6 months or something to kind of give a little bit of a boost to make the shows watchable, because they're going to especially with Raw, with Judgment Day, it's been the same thing for the past 6 months. So they needed to kind of change things up completely. And they did with this. And I kind of felt it with people returning here. Then we had a tag team turmoil match that had all the tag teams involved going for the number one contendership. And it started off a little bit slow, but eventually it ended up being what I wanted it to be. And a tag team turmoil match, or any turmoil match where you have just a bunch of people coming out, like whoever lasts basically gets the win, continues on, and has to go through a gauntlet of people, right? And that can work if you're trying to build up specifically a babyface. For this, it would be a tag team babyface. I remember a few years ago, before WrestleMania, I think it was for the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, they had on Raw some kind of gauntlet match, and Seth Rollins lasted forever. And it really, he was already a main eventer by that point in time, but on that specific show and for the next little while, he had boosted his level up to a degree because you made him into an even more credible star than he was by lasting that long. I absolutely love that, and I was hoping that we would kind of get that from this. It wasn't nearly the same because you're dealing with mid-card tag teams here, but they did build up the Creed brothers, who I think are totally deserving of this. I think they're still a little bit green because I think that they could touch up a few things a little bit in the ring a bit more. I think maybe one more year in NXT would have helped quite a bit. Hopefully on the house shows they're actually being teamed. I don't know who they're actually being partnered up with during the house shows, but I'm hoping that it's in experienced team. New Day, it's two faces, but New Day would really do well because they've been there for so long. Kofi's been around he's one of the vets at this point in time in WWE, which is wild for me to say because he's been around since like 2008 or whatever. No, 2006 I think he showed up in ECW. I think it was something like that, maybe 06 or 07. That's wild. But either way, what they did was what they wanted them to do, was to build up the Creed brothers. I think you could have even had them start the match, because the starting of the match was Otis and Tozawa versus DIY. And I think that it would have been maybe a little bit better to have the Creed brothers start, or right afterwards have them show up. But it was the Veer, the I don't even know what the guy's name is. Who's the guy that was champion for a while, that was part of the three-man club, the three-man band, 3MB. There's Heath Slater, Drew McIntyre, and the guy that beat Randy Orton that I never thought was worthy of being a main eventer. And clearly WWE feels the same way. He went down the ladder by quite a bit. Anyway, whoever they were, they showed up afterwards, and eventually the Creed brothers showed up. They lasted the longest out of any team, and they beat Imperium, and that was quite nice. And I feel like once the Creed brothers started wrestling a little bit longer, the crowd started to get into it, or get more into it. I just felt like it wasn't this big match, but they kind of still went with the right people to win this. I fully expect the Creed brothers to lose, and I think that they should, because I don't think that they're ready at this point in time to be tag team champions. Build it up. Have these guys be this underdog babyface team that is hungry, that wants to win, that wants to prove themselves. And they constantly keep getting close, and they'll do very well up until that big moment, and they choke or they lose, and it's because of shenanigans or something like that. And build it up, build it up, build it up. Don't give them the win right now. It won't. Winning the tag titles right now will do nothing for them. It won't. Building it up so that it actually means something, so that they lose this tag title match next week or whenever it's going to be, that will mean a lot more. That's what I'm hoping for. We'll see how it goes. Next up, we had the Cody coming out and having a promo. This picked things up again. So you had a good opening with Orton. The tag team turmoil match, while it started slow, it ended correctly, just not necessarily super exciting. Then we had the Cody promo. He talks about War Games as well. He thanks all of his teammates, obviously, and that he was part of the match that his father created. And then he announces himself as the first entrant, or the first person that will be part of the Royal Rumble in 2024. We're not even in December yet. Like, this is 2 months away. That's kind of crazy. And then the lights go out. Nakamura comes on the screen, and he cuts his promo basically that he was going after Cody this entire time, so that he can't finish his story. And then he comes out, attacks Cody, throws him the mist. I feel like Nakamura lost too much with Seth Rollins recently for him to be seen as not necessarily a credible threat to Cody, because no matter who Cody was going to be facing after this was going to lose, whoever the feud is until the Royal Rumble, Cody's going to go over no matter what. Other than maybe like Seth Rollins, like top guys like Punk, Orton, and Seth are about the only people that Cody might lose to, and even then, there's a very strong chance that he would beat all of them. Maybe not Punk. Punk's about the only one that I could see them not necessarily going for him beating. But I feel like we're all waiting down the line for those matches to happen, that they won't happen until next year at the very earliest. I really do think that he's going to be guaranteed he's going to have to face Punk at some point, which will be great. I hope that at that point we're able to mention or allude to AEW. We'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about Punk's promo, but that's what I'm hoping for. So Nakamura, I mean, he did go through a few people, so they have been booking him nicely on Raw, but I do think that at Survivor Series, they should have paced things a little bit better, had one extra match, which would have been Nakamura versus Gable for about 10 minutes. And I think that would have been a lot better than, because then he would have had a win on a premium live event that everybody would have seen, right? Like, that's, to me, it always matters more when people would win on a pay-per-view or a PLE than if it was a regular TV show. You can definitely build things up on those TV shows, but the PLEs and the pay-per-views are generally what I think as that's where somebody should be getting a push, and that's what it should be seen as. Then we have TV shows are for angles, feuds, promos. That's what it's for, not necessarily matches and people going over there. Then we had Ivar versus Reed. And I don't really care for Bronson Reed at all. I really don't want him to get pushed at all. I think that they kind of understand that, and they've put him in a mid-card position that he won't be getting out of. They'll probably, he might get thrown into the Elimination Chamber every once in a while, but he's not going to win. I'm hoping that continues. Ivar, on the other hand, I absolutely love. So it was two big guys going at it. There was a moment where on the outside, near the end of the match, Reed was clearly gassed, like he had just lost complete steam, which was too bad because I think that this could have been a pretty good match, and I'm hoping for more things to come. But we had Reed that was holding Ivar, and he was too tired and he couldn't lift him up, so he gently placed him back down. Too bad that Reed was, too tired to do the whatever move it was supposed to be or whatever he was supposed to do with Ivar. But at the same time, at least he saved Ivar. He did not try to do it and botch it. They decided to go with something, or they decided to go to the next part or do something else instead. And I liked that. It kept Ivar safe. If you can't do something, Don't try it again if it's going to look bad or if it's going to be a botch, especially if it's going to be a botch. If you're too tired to do something, don't sacrifice the well-being of somebody. So I really did like seeing that. It's just too bad that he was too tired at this point in time, because I think that this could be really good. And I'm looking forward, because then they got a count out and Reed had Ivar afterwards and he smashed him into the guardrail there, and then they had a fight in the crowd. Ivar jumped on top of Reed. It was some awesome stuff. Reed looked very tired though. He was like gasping for breath. He was completely gassed out at this point in time. And that's too bad, because I think that they are leading towards another big match with them. And I'm totally for maybe some kind of gimmick match like Falls Count Anywhere or a street fight or something like that. I just don't know how well it could go, but Ivar is doing freaking awesome. I'm really digging that. And then we had a quick backstage segment, but we had Judgment Day coming over to their little area that they have, and Truth is there. And our Truth being back, we had a part where he was back as well with Alpha Academy and the Creed Brothers and a New Day when they were talking about the Tag Team Turmoil match. But having Truth here, because normally I go, oh, it's Judgment Day again. And Truth made it so much better. I was loving this. He's a comedy character that's understands exactly what he's supposed to be doing. He understands his role. They don't push him to the levels that he's main eventing or anything like that, which is good. He's used as comic relief that actually works. That's actually funny. So he offers to be part of the Judgment Day for their War Games match. And they're like, it already happened. You were at the pay-per-view. Like, and then he talks about, and then Truth is like, oh, well, how'd you guys do? Did you do well? Or I think he might have even asked, did I do well or something like, how did I do? He asks about himself. And then he's like, oh yeah, another great part was Orton came back. That's pretty cool. I loved this. I rarely ever like comedy in wrestling because I usually don't laugh. I find it cringeworthy that it's not, and the audience generally doesn't go for it either. But this, to me, I was completely sold. It's a guilty pleasure. If you're not into comedy and you didn't like this, I completely understand where you're coming from. I just very much enjoyed it. And then we had Nia Jax versus Zoe Starks. I seriously already forgot who won. I didn't care about this match. Then we had a Gunther and Miz backstage promo. Gunther was obviously upset with Imperium for having lost against the Creed brothers. Miz says that there's trouble in paradise, and then they kind of talk. And it looks like we might get a little bit more from this. I'm not really sure. It's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. I'm totally down for another match between the two of them because Miz did phenomenally well. And I'm hoping that if Gunther, I don't know how, but Gunther did not sell his leg nearly enough in the Survivor Series match. And I think that if had they done that and gotten just a few minutes more and had not such an anticlimactic ending to their Survivor Series match, that could have been a great match. Like maybe 4 stars and more, like in nearing match of the year candidate kind of territory. If they go 4.25, that's really good for me. There's no 5-star match that I've seen this year. The best would have been 4.25. I'm extremely picky with my ratings. There's specific things that I look for in a match, and I don't feel like the matches that I've seen, the best matches that I've seen this year would be Omega and Ospreay from New Japan Pro Wrestling, and oddly enough, Trish Stratus versus Becky Lynch in their cage match in the which PLE was that? Whatever the PLE was, I very much dug that match too. Both 4.25. There's a few other matches that have 4.25, but those two are the ones that come to mind right now. Oh, Sami Zayn versus Roman Reigns, that was excellent too. Cody versus Roman was pretty good at WrestleMania, but not as good as the 3 matches I just mentioned. I almost keep like burping. I'm sorry for that. I just ate. So anyway, let's go on to the last part here. So then we had a Seth promo once again. So this show to me was really a show of promos. The matches themselves were kind of eh. Did I mention that? Okay, I think that's afterwards. Okay, so I got to mention there's a tag title match too. So Seth comes out, has a promo. I like that he wasn't wearing crazy goofy stuff. Like what he wore was relatively tame for what he normally wears. He was still laughing a little bit, but not his usual self. And when he first came out, I was like, oh, He's not smiling. He's not dancing. I was like, this is a good Seth Rollins. I really hope. It feels like they might be eventually going to... He's still a face, but it looks like there's a chance that they might turn him heel in the coming months, potentially for Punk, and I'm all for that. So, because it makes a lot more sense for him to be laughing like an idiot when he's a heel. I would prefer he didn't, even as a heel. Like, the best version of Seth as a heel was the Authority version. Loved that version of him. That was perfect. It was also the different, at the time, how it worked. He screwed over Roman Reigns. Like, there was a lot of things going into that I really enjoyed, but still. So now we have him coming out. He talks a little bit, alludes to basically CM Punk and all that. But he says that he wants to be a fighting champion. And so he talked to Adam Pearce about this. And then Drew comes out. Drew has another great promo. I'm loving this version of a heel Drew because while he is a heel, it feels a little bit like he's a tweener. A bit. If he's not, that's fine. He's a heel. But what it is that he's kind of still acting and saying things that are not necessarily your typical heel. And I feel like that's when heels really excel, when they are admitting that they were defeated, that they did lose, what is bothering them, why they lost, that actually makes sense, but they're not really making an excuse for themselves. And I liked that. And then Drew even alluded, or actually straight up brought up his match with Seth, saying that because Seth told him that you would have nobody to blame but yourself. And Drew takes that and he goes one step above it by saying, so first of all, he congratulates Seth Rollins for the War Games win. And he explains that Jey Uso was just too much on his mind and he was freaking out about him. But what he needs to do now is really focus on what matters. And that's the world title that Seth has. And he says that, yes, I had nobody to blame but myself, but it's because that I gave you a chance, that I was thinking about your daughter, and I wanted to give you a chance, and you slapped me in the face with that. So I'm not going to be that generous next time. I need to act like this matters, and I'm not going to give you an inch at all to swim with the sharks. I've got to act like the biggest shark, and the sympathy is gone. I liked that quite a bit. That was really well done. Character depth, character progression, storyline progression. Really liking this part. And honestly, at this point in time, I don't really know. I originally wanted, before Punk was announced that Punk was back, originally I wanted Drew to be the one to dethrone Seth Rollins. I think that Seth Rollins has definitely had the world title long enough at this point in time. It's kind of gotten a little bit stale in the sense that it's just, to me, it's not really working, and I think that Drew definitely deserves a world title reign. It all depends. I assume it's because he hasn't signed his new contract, which I think ends in April. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at that point in time. But now I'm kind of okay for this feud because it's a placeholder until that we can get into the big money matches. But I don't want Drew to lose again. What I think is going to happen, because afterwards Seth said that, yes, that'd be nice if we could wrestle again, but I think that there's other people that deserve a title match. And Drew just says, would you mind telling me who is going to be wrestling you next week? He's not like being an asshole. He's not saying like, tell me right now who's going to win. Just like, could you at least mind humoring me and let me know? For some reason, that's really working for me. I like this. So Seth says it's Jey Uso, and Drew can't believe it, gives him a wicked headbutt that looks like he might have hit the world title instead, because then he started bleeding, attacks Seth Rollins. Jey Uso comes out for the save. But I really liked this. So next week we're getting Jey Uso versus Seth Rollins. Obviously Jey is not going to win, but it's something that's a little bit interesting. It's face versus face. Drew has to get involved. And then I'm thinking that maybe we'll get a 3-way for the Royal Rumble, right? Seth, Drew, Jey Uso. The only other thing that kind of makes me nervous is that I think that we will get eventually a Jey Uso, and then I assume that Seth will retain. And then we could maybe have a Jey Uso and Drew mini feud before WrestleMania, because they kind of do still hate each other, and a triple threat wouldn't be enough. And does that mean that Jey Uso wins the end of that so that he looks strong for his feud that he's going to have with Jimmy at WrestleMania, I assume? That kind of sucks. Jey Uso's okay, but I think that Drew is leaps and bounds ahead of him, especially as a singles competitor. I know that the fans are really into Jey Uso, but Drew to me is a really much better one to go with. Then I can't remember what we had next. I think it was then we had Drew in the background, in the backstage, looking just disheveled, bleeding from his forehead. They still hadn't fixed it. I really like that too. Remember a few years ago, for quite a long time, like close to a decade, WWE, anytime that there was a sign of blood, they would like stop the match and you'd have to like get it fixed right away, and it would completely slow down the match even if it was by accident. That was horrible. So at least now they don't do that. Then we had Sami Zayn coming over, cuts an extremely passionate, fired up promo, which is the best. That's the best version of Sami Zayn. Keep giving me this version. You can't do it every week. You can't make him just always be yelling at the top of his lungs where he's super passionate, because it'll kind of wear off. But the amount that they're doing is working. So he says, "What's going on with you, Drew? I've gone through everything that you've gone through and worse. I know what it's like to lose in front of my home crowd, my hometown, whatever it is. I get that. I was there. I did the same thing and the bloodline screwed me over. So I know what that feels like. But you've been a 2-time world champion. You are like 6'6" or whatever you are. Like, you still have things. I have it way worse than you. And the difference is that I still own up to that. I'm not going to lash out. This is my fault. This is something that I need to change. And I still want, in the end, the world title. And that's what I'm going to go for. But I'm not going to do what you're doing." Loved that. Just a few minutes, really, really good. Drew says, "Well, next week you and I are going to find out, because I guess they're going to have a match." Liked that. It's setting things up, and we got a really good... We're getting two good versions here, Sami Zayn and Drew, and I'm totally for a mini feud like that. I hope it goes a little bit longer, but we'll see how that goes. Oh, could we have a fatal 4-way? Potentially. There's too many faces if that's the case, unless Seth turns heel, which they could do. That wouldn't be bad. Anyway. Then we had, I think that after that, we had the tag title match for the women. Chelsea won. Moving on. Then we had Randy Orton versus Dominik Mysterio. And I thought that this was perfect for Randy Orton to come back. It's arguably the biggest heat heel that you have on Raw that can totally take a loss, no problem. That people are going to definitely cheer Orton for and boo Dominik against. You had the Judgment Day out there. Orton just looks also incredible. I have to say, I don't know if I've ever seen him this jacked. Even when he came out in his t-shirt, like, he looks massive. It's nuts. So he went out there. He looked excellent in the ring. Dominik really did a great job of selling for him, setting things up so that he can hit all his big moves. RKO looked beautiful, as it always does, but this looked extra crisp. Loved it. But I keep watching Randy and I'm like, ooh, he's taking a bump. Ooh, he's taking a bump on the back. And it kind of makes me a little bit nervous, because apparently that's what he got the surgery for, his back surgery. And it's because apparently of all the RKOs that he's been doing. But he keeps saying that he wants to be here for 10 more years, or as long as he possibly can be. So I'm curious to see where that's going to go. Just don't have him on house shows anymore. Have him wrestling often enough, because if you don't, you'll eventually lose that little bit that Jericho and Kurt Angle have talked about, where if you stop wrestling for a while, especially as you get older, it gets a lot harder to come back every year after that, or every next time. But if you're wrestling week by week, you should be okay. So don't put him on house shows. He doesn't need to be on the road anymore, but definitely make him part of Raw or SmackDown wrestling every week so that he doesn't lose that. And then we had the main event, which is Punk coming out for a 5-minute promo where he basically says that the whole point of it is that he's home. Yeah, that's nice, but we wanted a lot more. We wanted some mentions. You can't mention AEW specifically. You can't mention probably the Young Bucks, Tony Khan, Paige, Jungle Boy by name, but you could allude to them. And that's what I was hoping for, because that's, I think, what everybody was just salivating at the mouth for. And I think that you could still say that you're home after saying, where I've been recently. I thought I knew what wrestling was and what I wanted from wrestling. And it took me going someplace else to realize how much I miss home. Something like that. I think that would have worked a lot better, even if you can't mention too much of AEW. Just that little bit would have been better than what we got. He did mention also that like pretty much everybody in the back is happy to see me. They're hugging me, kissing me on the lips, whatever. And not everybody is happy to see me, but we'll get to that eventually. So we're definitely getting Seth Rollins versus Punk, although I'm still hoping for Punk versus Austin. We'll see if that happens, but at Mania. But anyway, so we get some sprinkles, and I think that's where we're going to get the old Punk, hopefully. And so that's why I'm still very much looking forward to the future, because Punk needs, if he can't mention AEW because of the legal stuff, which kind of sucks, I think you could have still said, and I don't know how it works. I don't know if he could have mentioned that, I went somewhere else and realized how much I missed home. I don't know if that could have worked, if he could have legally said that. I mean, they're kind of restrained if they can't really mention it at all. But once he gets into an actual proper feud, then we're going to get the good promos where Punk can just go all out, because it's been years since he's been here. So he'll find whatever to talk, to say about these people that is going to be real, that's going to hit home, that's going to be awesome, as it usually is with his promo work. So kind of a letdown for here, but he did end his promo. The mic was gone. The logo goes up. He looks at the camera. He says he's back. And he says, "I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make money." Just a small bit, but a good zinger. It alludes that like maybe he'll be able to talk about it down the line. I really want him to have a feud with Cody and to start mentioning a bunch of stuff about AEW or alluding to it. I really, 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 really want that. And I want all of them, whatever feud he ends up with, people talking about that. I feel like you have to mention it. I know that that's not really WWE's style at all, but there's money there to be made cutting these promos and alluding to it. They've mentioned TNA before. One of the best parts was when they mentioned TNA, when Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens had gone to go see Kurt Angle on Raw to ask if they could be a tag team there. And he's like, "Oh no, we're filled up here in the tag division, but I heard that TNA's hiring." It's funny every so once in a while to have that kind of back and forth. AEW mentions WWE every other week, so you can totally do it once in a while if it makes sense for the talent that's involved and for what you're trying to get across. I think that you totally could have, if you could have legally done it, they should have done it here. I think you could have had it for 10 minutes, but maybe that's what they're going to be doing as time progresses. So you don't want to just shoot everything in one shot. We'll see. Overall, an okay show. The hype was up here, and it was kind of just okay. It wasn't their worst show, which thank God it wasn't. You did have some good stuff with the promos. Specifically, I think that the best promos, Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, and Drew. So Orton, Seth Rollins, and Drew, Cody Rhodes, and Punk. That to me. But Punk, even though his promo wasn't great, you could tell that he is just an expert on the mic. And that once he has something to substantially talk about, we're going to get there. It's going to be good. So that's it. That's Raw. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this. And you have been bearded in. Beardage.